In this video, I'm going to show you the #1 thing you should pay attention to when shooting subjects with highly reflective surfaces. I will then show you how I shot this image that I posted on my Instagram a few weeks ago that demonstrates that. Now, if you saw the post on Instagram, you may be like, why are you making a video on this when you already posted the BTS? Well, for one, yes, although I posted the BTS, I still got a number of responses to show it here on YouTube how I did it. But I also want to talk about how annoying reflections can be. I think it's a pretty underlooked area of lighting. They're almost always distracting, and it usually takes a ton of time to fix and get them right. When you do get them right, however, the final result usually ends up pretty incredible. But before I show you how I shot the image, take a look at this comparison to show you what I mean. If you just focus on the reflection of the light source, which one would you prefer for the image? Now, I don't know about you, but I would go with the reflection that has the more pleasing gradient, and I'm going to assume that you would go with that one too. The common mistake is throwing up a softbox or an umbrella, dialing in the exposure, taking the shot, and then calling it a day, because although that may work for like pasta or cookies or a slice of toast, their surfaces aren't as reflective, so you'll get a beautiful light without seeing that light source's reflection. But when you're dealing with things like glass or utensils or soda cans in this case, you can get a great exposure, but that light source ends up being reflected into the camera, and if we're not careful, it can become a major distraction and it can end up diminishing the value of your image. All right, so what is the solution? Very simply, we need to create more flattering reflections from our light sources. And we do that by minding how we shape our light source so that when we illuminate our subject, that reflection still shows up, but it actually complements our subject nicely instead of being a distraction. And to really show you what I mean, I'm going to show you right now how I did it with this image. So I started with placing a surface on top of 2 sawhorses, which I just purchased and definitely is an upgrade to the creaky table I used to use. Then I placed a 12x12 black plexiglass near the far left corner of the surface, from which I placed the tripod and camera on the opposite end of that surface. And with the 100mm macro lens, it seemed to have been the perfect distance for the photo. I placed a brand new can on the plexiglass and centered it up in the frame using the grid overlay in my camera. Now, I'm not sure exactly how to do this with other cameras, but for the 5D Mark IV, if you are shooting with that camera, you can go to the menu and go under the camera icon, go to the 5th tab, scroll down, and then select Grid Display. And then in that menu, you can select which grid overlay you would like to choose from. Then once you've done that, when you pull up live view, you'll be able to see that grid overlay as you compose your shot. Cool, right? It's super helpful for guiding your compositions in camera. All right, and then next I set up my light. Now I started with the main light first. For this, I used the ProPhoto B10 and placed a strip box on it. Then I placed a Rosco diffusion sheet in front of it and made sure to angle the strip box in this way. I dialed in my settings and then took a test shot to see what that light looked like. So remember what I said about creating more flattering reflections. Not only do I want to illuminate this side of the can, but since the material of the can is very reflective, I need to make sure that the reflection of the light source complements the surface of the can, and for this, I need to create a linear gradient shape to the light. So that's what I did here. And I know what you're thinking. Now it's too dark on the right side. I know. I'll get to that in a bit, but I want to build my lighting setup one light at a time. So then I set up a backlight that will illuminate this yellow background that had already set up. I placed the flash on camera left, raised it up high, and then angled the head down so that the light hits the background in this direction. Now I turned off the main light just so I can see what that backlight looks like alone, and then I took another test shot. So what I got was these streaks of light that it created, but it wasn't quite centered, so I ended up fixing that. So when I did that, I took another test shot, and this is what it turned out to look like. Looks much better, right? Then I turned back on the main light and took a test shot to see what those 2 lights look like together. Okay, so the patterns of light look great. I love the light on the can, and I like how the light on the background looks. But right now, the background light looks just a bit brighter than the light on the can, and what it ends up doing is it takes my attention away from the can because the brightest part of the frame is what my eye will be drawn to, right? Now, the good news with using artificial light is we can adjust the flash power of one flash in relation to another flash to control the exposure of certain parts of the image. So in this case, I can simply lower the flash power on the back flash and even increase slightly the power of the main light. Then once I had dialed that in, I took another test shot and let's see what we have. Okay, now that is much better. Now if we compare those two images, the can in the right image stands out much more than it did in the left image. All right, next is I want to take care of some of the reflections that I see on the right side of the can. So I'm just going to simply add a black foam board on camera right to block those reflections. All right, so now I went ahead and dealt with the right side of the can as I do think it is too dark. Now, the first thing I want to do is add a rim light to the can. A rim light can also be called an edge light, and all it is it's a light that helps separate the subject from the background by illuminating, well, the edge or the rim of the subject. So I could easily add just another flash to do that, but I wanted to add a rim light that is very, very subtle, meaning that I wouldn't need a lot of power to illuminate that part of the can. So what I did instead was add a white foam board behind the can on camera right. I made sure to move it close so that the light firing from the main light can bounce off of this card and onto the can. All right, so now that I've done that, here's another test shot and let's see how that worked out. As you can see, there is now a little bit of illumination on the right side of the can. Now let's compare it to the last image. So there is a difference, but I would like it to be just a little bit brighter. So I added another flash coming from the same side as the main light, and I also fired it through the diffusion material. Then I took another test shot with just that third flash firing, and here's what that test shot looked like. Okay, so it looks like this light actually illuminates more of the label, which is what I want. I can also see that it does bounce off the back foam board and causes more of a rim light on the right side of the can. So when I turned on the other two lights and took another test shot, here's what that looked like. There definitely ended up being a difference in that rim light. It does look a little bit brighter, which is what I wanted. But just to be sure, I wanted to compare it to the previous image without that addition of this third light. Now looking closely at the rim light, you can see there is definitely a change in exposure of that rim light, and I really like the result of what that third light did. Okay, now is the time to put the condensation on. This is not facial mist, even though the label may say so. What this is basically 20% glycerin and 80% water. Just to put it in this bottle that I found that wasn't used anymore. Don't judge me. So you want to make sure that you get a good amount of condensation on there, but you don't want to put too much where it kind of blocks the label. You want to put a good amount that it has this sense that it's cold, but you still see the label. So here we go. I don't want to spray it on the lens, so I'm gonna go right here. I think that looks great. There you go. Glycerin, you can't see it. Glycerin and water. That stuff is gonna stick on there for sure. All right, let's put it on the surface and we'll see how it looks. Okay, so I'm missing some on the left side of the can. So instead of taking it out and having to reposition it, I'm just gonna spray it on. I don't mind. There. All right, well, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I know photographing reflective surfaces can be difficult, but Just remember that working with reflections can be a great way to sharpen your lighting skills, even your problem-solving skills. It really makes you think how to solve, problems on set. And I'm gonna go into this concept of strengthening your lighting skills for higher end looking images in my new course that I'm currently designing. And if you wanna know when that thing releases, then sign up for my email list and you'll be the first to know when that thing's ready for launch. All right, give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and remember to subscribe if you aren't already. Other than that, I hope you're having a great day, and I will talk with you next time. Bye.